Succeeding in life requires boundaries. Stay to the end to understand how this affects your divine masculine and future union. Boundaries is one of those things that until you start practicing them, you won't fully understand their value. The most successful people in the world say no more often than others. If you don't have boundaries in place, you're living your life for other people. You are doing what they ask, what they want, and fulfilling their desires. This can be with your friends, in your workplace, with your family, and most definitely with your twin flame. When people meet you, they rate you through an automatic subconscious meter. You even do this as well. You probably just haven't thought about it, but this meter gauges many things about another person. How open they are, what they are willing to do for others, how dependent they are, and how secure their boundaries are. Whether you realize it or not, you are analyzing this with every person that you meet. You aren't even conscious to it. We all do this with each other. People who have a habit of wanting to control or take advantage of others will even try to pass these limits. This is why we need boundaries. Let's first talk about the different kinds of boundaries. You have a boundary on your time, the space around you, and a body boundary. Your time boundary is how you spend your life, where you are willing to work, or the type of work that you are willing to do, the events you choose to attend, and the people you want to interact with. Your space boundary involves your home, how far you live from the next home next to you, maybe a cubicle at work, or an office where others have to knock. Men might have a man cave, or others might have a home gym, or a reading area that is where they take some space from others. Some people, like me, prefer to sleep alone and want a whole bed to themselves. This next one involves the body. This boundary says who is allowed to touch you. This includes even small things as tickling and hugging. Some of you may have had these boundaries well intact and practice them quite well. Others may not realize that they don't have any boundaries in place at all. Let's walk through a few examples to help you understand where these all play out in your life. First, we'll talk about the problems, and then the solutions. The first example is one Brené Brown talks about a lot in her books and speeches. Brené is an author and a speaker, but also a parent. Her time is incredibly valuable. She has to find ways to split this time between work and family. When she used to drop off her kids or pick them up from school, she would often get asked to participate in school events. A perfect example was a bake sale. One mom would always make sure to corner her and ask her to bake 3 dozen cookies. Granted, these other moms may have been full-time stay-at-home moms, or maybe they had part-time jobs. We know for sure they did not have the kind of demanding, busy life that Brené Brown does. They had certain expectations of Brené as a parent and the amount of time she should be putting towards school events. Now on to the second example. This is one from my life. Actually, the next two will be. When my father passed away, I inherited his home. I had just moved into my brand new home, a home that I patiently waited for 5 months to be built. I had picked out all the features by myself, down to the flooring, paint colors, color scheme, and the lot that the home would be placed on. Because my father had just passed, I was in a very vulnerable place, and 2 people from my past decided to re-enter my life. One was my dad's neighbor, who was actually my neighbor when I was a teenager, and the other was a friend from high school. Both of them were very insistent that I sell my new home and move into my father's home. Now, just to give you a bit of perspective, my home was built in the part of town where I wanted to live. It was newer and trendy and closer to my job. My dad's house had a horrible floor plan. It had termites, bees, and mold problems. On top of that, it needed a ton of remodeling. Now, watching this, it's probably obvious to you which home that I wanted to live in. And I was actually shocked that these two women continued to harass me about moving to the home my dad had passed away in. Let's go on now to the third example. This one involves my twin flame, except I didn't know about twin flames at the time. Things were really rough between the two of us, but we were trying to give it one last attempt. We hadn't made time for each other in a while, and finally agreed to spend a Friday night together at my place. We had plans to go food shopping and cook over the weekend. The day before, I was at work speaking with my boss, who was also somewhat my friend. She mentioned she wanted to have a bunch of us go bar hopping Friday night. I politely said I couldn't go because I had plans with my boyfriend. In my mind, I wanted nothing more than to finally spend this time with him uninterrupted. But back then I was heavily into my people-pleasing tendencies, and I desperately wanted the validation and approval of others. She could sense how on the fence I was about going out with them, that I wasn't listening fully to my own intuition. She saw the opportunity to convince me to go. I then tried to provide more explanation on why I didn't want to. And with that, not only did she end up convincing me to go, but also to bring my boyfriend along. Now let's look at the solutions on these three examples. The last scenario with the Friday night event, we ended up going out, and so it was my boyfriend along with 9 other women, including me. Neither of us wanted to be there. The fact that I hadn't considered him, but more importantly hadn't considered myself, caused a huge tear in our relationship. I had betrayed myself and him in the process. So how did this fail, and what should I have done? Well, when you find yourself in this kind of situation, you say no. If they ask why or work to convince you to say yes, you continue to say no. I know for some of you, you may already be envisioning the incredible awkwardness. Just picture yourself repeating the word no and then enduring the silence. In the beginning, you'll want to fill in that gap. You'll want to help them understand, but you actually need to stop here. See, when you give them any further explanation of your no, you're actually giving them the opportunity to break down your no. You don't ever owe others any explanation. You may have been taught differently growing up, but that's conditioning you need to let go of. Had I just continued to say no to her, my weekend could have looked completely different. But now I will never know, because in a split moment, I had decided her desires were more important than my own. Back to the situation with the 2 homes. Thank goodness I had enough boundaries in place at that time to say no. And I actually never convinced either of these women, even when I had them over to my beautiful new house. They still wanted me to move to the neighborhood and the house that would have made me unhappy. And by the way, both of them disappeared from my life not long after that. I remember the friend from high school recommending the book, How to Influence Others. I don't remember the full title, but you guys know what book I'm talking about. This is how she lived her life, telling others what to do and how to live their lives. That book is probably one of the best sellers out there. So this is what you're all up against. These people wanting to influence you just so they can feed their egos and feel validated in a split moment. Yet they don't care about the consequences of you taking their advice. These 2 women would not have cared if I ended up miserable in that home. And the woman, my boss, who at the time convinced me to go out with her that Friday night, she did not care that she ruined my weekend. This is why you must have boundaries. You are protecting what is important to you. Okay, let's move on to Brene's situation. So she would find herself committing to baking 3 dozen cookies, while also having a deadline on her next book or needing to pack for the next speaking event. Was this 3 dozen cookies going to strengthen her relationship with her daughter? I mean, it wasn't her daughter doing the asking here. Was it going to help Renee out in any way at all? No, absolutely not. But she would say yes in the past to avoid the discomfort of saying no. She also did it out of habit. So what did she do to solve this? The next time someone would ask her to make guacamole for the spring event at school, she would turn the ring on her finger fully 3 times before saying yes. This gave her the opportunity to give thought to her decision. She could quickly check in with her own intuition. 3 simple turns of her ring, and she was able to say no. Being able to practice boundaries requires you to allow others to sit in their own discomfort. This will help you to discard any people-pleasing tendencies you may have. You have to put your comfort above anyone else's. I will tell you all, when I moved to Colorado and started my businesses, I told almost no one, and I've never felt more free. Setting boundaries will literally change your life and free you from whatever binds you. Now, how does this all affect you and your twin flame? Well, if you haven't heard me say it before, there will be nothing harder in life than setting boundaries with your twin. There is nothing on earth like the situation we are all in, where we love someone and are conscious to our love for them. We know that love isn't going anywhere, and yet it's not easy. It actually requires boundaries. Union will never happen without balance, and you have to find a place with your twin where you can love them, but know when to set your boundaries with them. Know that boundaries are not walls. You are not punishing them or running from them. Boundaries are just about self-respect, taking the opportunity to spin your ring 3 times before saying yes. Actually, when it comes to your twin flame, I'm going to recommend giving yourself even more time before making decisions. And remember to check in if a yes is coming from you or your inner child. You cannot let your inner child lead you here. You are in charge now, not wounding from decades ago. Therefore, you have to consider the consequences of your actions, and also ensure that the 2 of you aren't just repeating patterns that tend to send you back into separation. So where do you start with all of this? Sometime this week, I want you to say no to someone. Even if it's just something easy. Just say no anyway. Sit with the silence, and if they proceed further in asking you, say no again. Starting small is the key to changing your life. Please like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe for more content. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.